Today I'm going to talk about the abuse of authority by law enforcement, and I'm not talking about every single person in law enforcement because I know some of you might have some family or know someone in law enforcement, and I'm not judging every single law enforcement. I'm just talking about the people that actually do take advantage of their power. How many of you guys are familiar with the Kelly Thomas beating in Fullerton? No? Not many? Oh. Kelly Thomas was a man that was actually beaten, and unfortunately those officers were taken to trial and they were actually, the verdict was not guilty. I'm not arguing whether they were guilty or not, but what do pisses me off is the fact that Fullerton Police Department still to this day says that there was no policies being violated by those officers. And there's obvious video of them beating him up. I'm going to talk about 3 topics today: law enforcement tactics and how they use those tactics to make you give up your rights, your constitutional rights, or at least the ones that pertain to any police encounter, and tactics we can use as citizens in order to fight against that abuse of authority. First thing, you guys should all know that police officers ask loaded questions. So whether you say yes or no, regardless, excuse my language, but you're fucked. And for example, they can ask you, sir, I remember one time I got pulled over and I was completely surprised by the question they asked me. They said, when you ran that red light and you were switching lanes, did you notice that you didn't turn your blinker on? I was in my head, I was like, really? Like, I can't believe, because you guys should always, for example, you guys should know that they make you think that you have no rights. For example, if they ask you certain things like, oh, is there anything in the car I should know about? And you say no, the following question they're going to ask you makes you think that you have something to prove to them because of the fact that you just said no. But this is going to bring me on to my next point, your constitutional rights. Your 4th Amendment rights states that you're protected against unreasonable searches and seizures. And officers, every time they ask you questions, they're just trying to widen the margin and to catch you or pin you into doing something. And you can narrow that margin down by exercising your rights. For example, your 4th Amendment right states that they need a search warrant to search your car. And that legal document, the search warrant, has to state what crime exactly they think you're committing, what exactly they're looking for, and where they'll be looking for it. And a lot of officers aren't going to want to go through that in just a typical stop. And your 5th Amendment right states that you have the right to remain silent. So people, use that right. Do not incriminate yourself, because anything you say can and will be used against you. And unfortunately, cops have a way with twisting your words in that police report. And a technique you guys can use is don't fall into their bundle of questions. You have to speak first. As soon as the officer approaches your vehicle, ask him, what did you stop me for? And the reason that he gives you, he has to just keep everything he says within that reason. He can't ask you to get your car searched. He can't seize any of your property. And you have to ask, what's the reason for being stopped, so that he can just base the whole stop just on that. And just like officers have batons, just like how they have guns, we have a very important weapon, like my friend Jesus is using there. It's a cell phone. And you guys I believe all police encounters should be filmed. 1, just to hold the accountability of the police officers, and 2, because once you let them know, because laws vary by state, but in California, since police officers are protected by certain laws like tap wiring laws or privacy laws, in order for that evidence to be admissible in court, you have to let the officer know that you're filming them. So it's always better to be polite and just simply let the officer know, officer, you're being audio and video recorded for my own safety, and that's going to make them watch what they say and watch what they do. And a certain technique that's very important that you guys can all use is ask the officer, because I know there's been many cases where the officer comes to your car, he tells you what you did, if it's speeding or whatever it is, and then he walks back to his police vehicle, search a damn vehicle code that he's going to pin you on, and then he just writes it down and gives you the citation. But if you film and you actually, before he goes back to his vehicle, you have to ask him, exactly what vehicle code do you suspect me of violating? And if he says something like, I'll figure it out, or I'll see in a second, and you have that on tape, that's grounds for dismissal, because he has the right to let you know what he stopped you for, because he already made that stop, and he has to give you the exact vehicle code that he stopped you for. But let's say he does write you the citation regardless. There's a way that you guys can go to court without actually having to go to an actual court appearance and facing a judge. It's called a trial by written declaration. And a trial by written declaration, all you have to do is go to a court, talk to a clerk. Unfortunately, the only downside of this is that you have to pay your full bail, whether it's $400 something or I don't know how much the damn tickets go nowadays. But with that, you have the right to fight it by a written declaration. The officer has a certain amount of time to submit his evidence, and you have a certain amount of time to submit your evidence. And I fought a few cases and I won my cases, although I hope this doesn't work against me, but I was speeding in those cases and it didn't matter regardless, because a lot of times the officers don't have that evidence. It's just their